It started with silence, not the quiet kind that helps you sleep at night, but that weird, oppressive kind that sits too heavy in a house too empty. My parents had finally retired and left for their self-proclaimed paradise in Portugal, handing me the keys to the home I grew up in, a 2-story suburban relic with a creaky foundation and walls that remembered everything. They called it a gift. To me, it felt like a tomb. At 32, single, out of work, and with bills stacking like bad habits I didn't shake in my 20s, the space felt excessive. I didn't need the upstairs, much less the cavernous basement that smelled like damp cardboard and old furniture. Still, it was better than living with roommates or trying to fake enthusiasm at apartment viewings I couldn't afford. The economy had tanked during the pandemic. I'd lost my job. My savings were gone. Desperation makes you revisit things you'd normally run from, like that basement. So I started cleaning it out. Dusty bookcases, moldy rugs, forgotten toys from decades ago, junk with memories stuffed inside. I hauled what I could to storage, scrubbed until my knees hurt, popped open windows that hadn't moved in a decade, and aired it out like I was trying to chase away ghosts. It wasn't much, but it was livable. A single large room with low ceilings, gray concrete beams, and barely there lighting. But it had a bathroom, a private entrance, and a weird sort of underground quiet. Maybe exactly what someone might want. Someone looking to disappear. I put a listing online. No frills. Just honest photos and a ridiculous rent price that barely covered utilities. I figured either someone desperate would take it, or I'd delete the post before anyone weird found it. I got 24 messages in the first week, all of them spam, except one. A man named Elian replied late at night, like 3:33 a.m. late. His message wasn't long. Saw your listing. Basement looks ideal. Quiet's good for me, can pay 3 months up front. No pets, no noise, no drama. It should have sent up red flags. But when your checking account knows you're broke before you do, logic becomes flexible. He showed up the next day. No warning, just a knock at the back door around noon while I was reheating leftover curry. I paused mid-bite, grabbed my hoodie, and opened the door. He stood there wearing black, head to toe, like the sunlight was optional. Tall, lean, pale, with a smile that stretched a little too long, but didn't quite reach his eyes. He didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he spoke in a low, smooth voice, like someone who learned English through an audiobook. Elian, he said. Right, I said, adjusting my posture, trying not to look like I lived in this hoodie. You, here for the basement? He nodded once. Yes. May I see it? Something about him felt like subtraction. Like standing near him somehow took something from you. But I pushed that feeling aside. I needed the money. So I led him down the uneven wooden staircase behind the house and into the concrete womb below. He didn't say much during the tour, just looked, touched the walls, walked to the back corner quietly, like he was calculating shadows. When I explained the patchy Wi-Fi, the awkward plumbing, the basement's tendency to smell like metal during the summer, he just said, "It's ideal." Before I could reply, he pulled out a folded envelope, pressed it into my hand, and said, 3 months. I'll bring my belongings tomorrow. He turned to leave before I could say yes. No questions, no small talk. Inside the envelope was exactly $2,100. All in clean, crisp $100 bills. That night, the house felt quieter. More alert. like something had noticed him arriving, even if I hadn't said yes. The next morning, his things showed up. Not movers, not a truck, just him, with 2 duffel bags and a square plastic trunk that scratched the floor as he dragged it inside. I asked if he needed help. He didn't answer, just nodded politely and closed the door behind him. That first week felt normal. Almost. No noise, no complaints. He didn't cook, didn't come upstairs. Only used the side entrance next to the basement door. I rarely saw him. I'd sometimes notice the light under the door after midnight, quietly humming. Once or twice, I heard a low, rhythmic thudding, like someone pacing slowly, but only for a few seconds. Then silence again. Then came the smell. On day 9, I noticed it in the kitchen, faint but sharp. Metallic, sour, like rust and vinegar had a baby. At first, I thought it was a plumbing issue, but it seemed strongest near the basement door. I knocked. No answer. "Elian," I called out. "Giolento." The smell faded within hours like it had never been there. Strange but ignorable. That's the mantra I lived by. Maybe that's why I didn't ask more questions, why I kept trading weirdness for rent. On day 12, I saw him standing in the backyard, perfectly still. No phone, no cigarette. Just facing the woods behind the house, hands clasped behind him. I watched from the upstairs window for 2 minutes, and he didn't move, not even once. Then suddenly, he turned his head, not his body, just his head, and looked directly at my window, not upward. At the exact window pane I stood behind, I closed the curtains. That night, I dreamed I was in the basement, but not my basement. This one was immense, hollow, the walls pulsing like lungs. I was barefoot, and the floor felt alive. Something shifted in a corner I couldn't see. I wanted to wake up, but the basement breathed, each inhale pressing the air from my lungs. I jolted awake, soaked in sweat. It was 3:33 a.m. The house was silent again. A lion didn't cause noise. He caused stillness. By day 15, the lights in the hallway flickered near the basement door. I joked to myself that I had a haunted breaker. The joke didn't help. That night, heading to bed, I swore I heard something whisper my name from inside the vent above the door. Just a whisper, enough to make my stomach twist. I went to check the lock. It was latched from the inside. Always was. Still, I said aloud, "Hey, Elian, just want to make sure everything's okay." No answer. Then he spoke quietly from behind the door. "Everything is." 2 small words, but the voice wasn't the one I'd heard 15 days before. It was almost his, almost human, but not. That voice, "Everything is." It stuck in my ears long after the words had stopped. I stood there paralyzed, my hand still on the doorframe, trying to convince myself I'd just imagined the difference, that I'd let fear twist his voice into something alien. But the difference was real. His usual tone was smooth, deliberate, a little cold, but human. This voice was awkwardly tuned, like someone trying to imitate a human rhythm, but forgetting that inflection comes from the gut, not the throat. I stepped away, hard in my teeth, and locked my bedroom door for the first time since I was 15. I barely slept. The next morning, I almost believed I'd overreacted. The sun was out. Coffee on the porch didn't taste like dread. Maybe I'd let isolation curl too deep under my skin. It had been 4 months since I lost my job. 2 months since I'd seen most of my friends. People snap with less, right? Later that afternoon, I was outside sweeping leaves when I saw it. The plastic trunk Elian had brought in on day one. It was sitting outside the basement door, cracked open. I walked over cautiously, assuming he'd forgotten to shut it. But as I got closer, I saw what was inside. Skin. Not flesh. Skin. Like costume material. Latex, maybe. Folded layers of it. Lifelike texture. Fake pores. Peach-toned pigment. It looked like someone had made a full-body suit of skin and just stuffed it in a plastic box like winter clothes. I gagged. Backed away. Eyes watering and mind scrambling for excuses. Makeup artist? Cosplayer? Psychopath? Before I could decide whether to peek again or set the trunk on fire, the basement door creaked open. Elian stood there. Only it wasn't quite Elian. His proportions were off. Taller maybe, or thinner. The same face, but pulled tightly over the skull like shrink-wrapped meat. His lips barely moved when he spoke. "Apologies," he said, almost politely. "My belongings are private." I didn't respond, just raised a weak hand in a gesture that might have meant sorry. Or please don't kill me. Or who are you? He closed the lid slowly, slid the trunk back inside, and shut the basement door without another word. That night, the lights in the house flickered again. Harder this time. My phone lost signal around 9 p.m. and stayed frozen on 3:33 a.m. for over an hour. There were no dreams. There was just breathing. Not mine. Not upstairs. Below. Living with Elian now felt like sharing a house with a tiger that sometimes stood on two legs. I wanted him gone. I needed to evict him. But how do you kick out something that might not even exist by the same rules as you? I started keeping my door locked, left the TV on at night to drown out the silence, left a baseball bat under my bed. Paranoia became a roommate. Then, 2 days later, I heard kids laughing. I looked out my window and saw two small children standing near the woods behind the house, pointing at the basement entrance. They weren't playing. They were watching. They appeared again the next day, and the day after. Same outfits, same blank expressions. Sometimes they smiled, but their eyes just didn't. I tried to catch them, went outside, called out, even chased them once. But they never ran. They just stared at me like they were waiting for something. The neighbor, Mrs. Fowler from 2 doors down, saw me outside one of those days yelling at bushes and asked if everything was okay. "Just kids," I said, trying to sound casual. "Might be Elian's relatives." "Who's Elian?" she asked. "The guy renting the basement?" I replied. She leaned forward with a stroller-pushing kind of curiosity. "Someone's living in your basement?" I froze. "Yeah," I said, "for like almost a month now." She looked genuinely confused, shook her head. "I see your car every day. I thought you lived alone." That night, something changed. A storm hit. High winds, power flickers, rain like someone turned the shower on full above the entire house. And that night, I heard footsteps upstairs. Not mine, not imaginary, deliberate, heavy, pacing. My room was on the 2nd floor. I crept out with the bat in one hand and my phone in the other, using the flashlight. Each step creaked under my feet as I climbed to the hallway, praying the noise had been an echo. When I reached the landing, everything went silent again. No power, pitch black. Then my phone vibrated. A picture message. No sender ID. Just a dark photo taken of me, standing right there on the upstairs landing, seconds ago. Phone in hand. Light on. Someone was watching. I sprinted back to my room, locked the door, shoved a chair under the knob, and sat breathing through a veil of panic, expecting the knob to turn, the door to creak, heart watching for movement, hand on the bat like it'd actually help. But nothing came. I stared at the photo again. There was something odd in the background. Blurred shadows, not just mine, stretching along the hallway behind me. Too many shoulders, too many heads. The next morning, I told myself it must have been some prank. Maybe a hacking app. Maybe someone had mirrored my camera somehow. Maybe anything but what it looked like. Someone, or something, was inside my house, with me. When I stepped outside to get some air, I noticed something else. The children by the woods weren't there, but someone new was. It was me. Standing barefoot by the edge of the trees was a figure shaped exactly like me. Same posture, same hoodie, even the same shoes I'd tossed out last week and forgotten to take to the trash. He didn't move, didn't wave, what? Just watched. I stumbled backwards like gravity had flipped, shut the door and bolted it. I was losing grip on what was real, losing grip on which version of me was actually me. I tried to confront Elian, waited until I heard him walking, or whoever wore his voice, and knocked hard on the basement door. "Elian!" I snapped. Silence. I knocked again, teeth clenched. "I need to talk to you." The door opened a crack. His eyes, or what was supposed to be his eyes, met mine through the sliver. Too glossy, too dark, like glass with something pressed behind it. "There's nothing to be afraid of," he said, voice almost soft. "I'm not afraid," I said, trying to convince myself just as much as him. "I just need to know what's going on here. Who are you?" He smiled, barely, like he'd just heard the world's oldest riddle. "That depends," he said. "Do you mean me as I am now?" He tilted his head. "Or me in the skin you recognize?" I backed up. He closed the door without another word, clicked the inner lock shut. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up with every damn light on, scrolling forums about doppelgangers, parasites, skinwalkers, shadow people, underground cults, government experiments, anything that might fit what I was living through. And through it all, I kept coming back to one memory. The envelope. Day 1. That clean stack of hundreds. I never counted them in front of him. Never felt the money until after he left the house. What if that moment, touching that envelope, was the trade? What if accepting it gave something else permission to enter? The next few days, I barely left my room. Just opening the door to the hallway felt like peeling open a wound I couldn't remember getting. I stayed in bed, blinds drawn, phone in hand, but there was no comfort left in anything. My apps wouldn't load. My calls dropped before they connected. Even the clock on my wall, real, battery-powered, started flickering between 3:33 and error. I started asking myself unanswerable questions. Had I ever seen Elian eat? Had I ever really seen him move? Did anyone else ever actually see him at all? Or was this whole thing stitched together from a part of my mind that had rotted without warning? Then came the envelope. I found it outside my bedroom door, not slid under it, placed, upright, waiting for me like a dog, waiting to be noticed. Same envelope he'd used on day 1, same weight, same dark ink across the flap. No stamp, no return address. I opened it. Inside was a photograph, a Polaroid. It showed me asleep in bed, lit by my own nightstand lamp, mouth slightly open, arms outside the blanket, phone cord still plugged in. I hadn't taken it. I turned the photo over. There was writing. In the same ink, "Would you like to leave now?" I didn't scream, not even a gasp. I just sat there, eyes stuck wide open, sweat soaking through my t-shirt. I was being offered an exit, but that one question came wrapped in something colder, something ancient, like whatever had taken Ilian, or worn Elian, was tired of pretending. It wasn't a joke, or a threat. It was a transaction. That night, I did not to sleep. I only remember blinking at one point, and Elian was standing in my hallway, just at the edge of the dark. No sound, no motion, arms at his sides like empty tools. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. It was like we agreed silently that I would keep surviving if I pretended not to see him. The stalemate shattered the next afternoon. I got a knock at the front door. For once, it wasn't Elian. It was a woman in her 60s, silver hair, denim jacket, eyes heavy with sleepless rings. "You're the one renting the basement, yeah?" she asked. I froze. "Who's asking?" She pulled out an old photo, grainy, faded. It showed a man who looked exactly like Elian, standing under the same porch I was now. "My brother," she said. "But not anymore." My heartbeat stopped. "Wait, he lived here?" 27 years ago, she said slowly. "He rented the basement. We lost him shortly after." Lost. Not in death. Not in location. In identity. "I've checked on the house every 5 years since," she said. "Never saw new tenants. Then, 2 weeks ago, your listing popped up." I tried to speak. Failed twice. Finally asked, "What happened to him?" Her gaze drifted. "He stopped being him." I wanted to call her crazy, I really did, but my chest was a fist with ribs growing tighter, and the word truth felt heavier than it ever should. "They wore him," she whispered, "like a coat." I didn't ask who they were, because deep down, I already knew. That night, I took sleeping pills just to slow my thoughts. I lasted maybe 3 hours before I heard scratching from inside the closet. Not loud, not desperate, just casual. Like whatever was inside wasn't trying to get out. It was just reminding me it could. I opened the door with the courage only sleeplessness can gift. Nothing inside. Just an old mirror I hadn't used in months. But the reflection, it didn't match me. The version of me in the mirror stood still. Too still. His chest didn't rise like he was breathing. His eyes blinked too late. And then? He smiled before I did. I punched the glass. Blood. Bile. Screams I smothered under my palm. I spent 40 minutes cleaning up the mess, not because I needed to, because I was afraid I might see my reflection again. And it might speak before I did. The basement stayed quiet. Elian didn't appear again. Not really, except at night, in that awful minute between dreams and waking, when I could feel him across the house. In the vents, in the wires, wearing the space around him like clothing. Then came the second envelope. Same handwriting, same Polaroid-style weight. On the front, check mark, just that, a check mark. Inside was a single page. "You are almost ready." For what? No answer. Just the sound of power failing again across the house. And a knock. Not at the door, but under the floorboards. I decided that was it. No more stalling. I was done living vertically above something that saw me not as a neighbor, not even as a host, but as a resource. I grabbed my jacket just after midnight and crept through the dark toward the basement door, phone in one hand, flashlight in the other. bat tucked into my sleeve like a secret I didn't truly believe I'd need to use. The door creaked open easier than it should have. No lock now, just permission. The stairs felt longer than before. The air grew thick, like molasses had replaced oxygen. By the time I hit the bottom, I could barely keep my flashlight steady. The basement was pristine, clean rugs aligned, furniture untouched. No blood, no messages, no alien, just an open trunk in the corner. Inside it? Suits, skin suits, too many. Some looked child-sized, some still wet. One of them was mine, my hoodie, my jeans, my watch, all lined with fake flesh, pressed to mimic pore and muscle. My heart didn't skip. It detonated. There weren't fingerprints inside the trunk. There were face prints, like something had forced its way in, not out. Then, across the room, I saw a mirror, just like the one from upstairs. I walked toward it like I wasn't in full control of my body. Something moved in the reflection first. It wasn't me. It was Elian. But not in his body, in mine. He looked human, but too perfect. Clean, smiling with confidence I hadn't felt in years. "It fits," he said with joy that felt too learned. And then I realized he wasn't speaking aloud. He was inside my head. I was watching myself from behind glass. I wanted to scream, but my body wouldn't move. My reflection tilted his head. My head. Studying himself in the mirror like a man examining a new suit before a job interview. "You're staying," he said, or thought, inside me. "In the old place. In the silence. Where we keep the first versions." "What does that mean?" He smiled wider. I could feel it in my face, even as I stood separate from it. That was the worst part. Not pain, not horror. The feeling that something had unplugged me from myself and I hadn't even noticed. "You invited me," he continued. The money, the handshake, the basement door. Every little choice I made. The things I thought I controlled. They were just steps in a ritual I didn't even know I was performing. Like signing a lease without reading the fine print. Except the fine print spelled out your soul. I remember blinking, and when my eyes opened again, I was back in my bedroom. Same faded posters on the wall. Same chipped nightstand lamp humming too loud. Same walls painted that late 2000s beige my mom never stopped loving. And standing in front of the mirror was me. At first glance, perfect. Normal. But I leaned closer and watched, just long enough to notice the pupils dilate like they remembered how. The flicker of a smile, half a second too late. A twitch in the left shoulder like a limb still adjusting to its costume. Whatever I saw that night, it put me back, not out of kindness, out of strategy. Because now, I walk, I talk, I go to the grocery store, I laugh with my neighbor, I wave to the mailman. I go back to being quietly, invisibly, average. But I know. It's still inside me, even now, right now. Watching this, reading this, hearing this. You don't know which version of me is sharing this story, do you? Because the thing about skin is, it stretches. Every once in a while, I hear scratching from the inside of my walls. Sometimes, I wake up on the floor with dirt under my nails and a new Polaroid waiting on my pillow. None of them show me doing anything. Yet. They just remind me I'm not alone in here anymore. And maybe neither are you. Because somewhere in another city, another basement, another man just handed a stranger an envelope and heard a quiet voice behind a locked door say, "Everything is